Hi, I'm Lynn Cornell, and welcome back to Journey Through the Bible, verse by verse. We're going to pick up our study where we left off from the last video in chapter 8, and we're in verse 34, but I'm going to go back and recap just a moment, and I'm going to start in verse 30. As he was saying these things, many believed in him, so Jesus said to the Jews who had believed in him, "If you continue in my word, you really are my disciples. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." "We are descendants of Abraham," they answered him, "and we have never been enslaved to anyone. How can you say you will become free?" So we left off here, and I just want to make a quick point about this before we move on, and that is, of course, the absurdity of their statement that we have never been enslaved. When, as they were speaking the very words, they were under the control of the Roman Empire. They, as a nation, had been under the control of one of the world dominant kingdoms for the previous 500 years, since the Babylonian Empire. And then they were shifted to the Grecian Empire. The Mede and Persian, then the Grecian, and then now they have been under the Roman Empire. And even before that, of course, there was the 400 years of slavery under Egypt. And then there was just from Egypt to Babylon, the sort of up and down enslavement, setting free from the different world kingdoms around them because of their many, many sins. So this is an absurd statement that they're making, and Jesus doesn't even respond to that, and for good reason. I mean, really, it wouldn't do any good if they could make this bold of a statement, and despite their reality, why respond? But Jesus does respond in a way that we see that as a pattern. This is how he responded. Jesus responded, this is verse 34, "I assure you, everyone who commits sin is a slave of sin. And the slave does not remain in the household forever, but a son does remain forever. Therefore, if the Son sets you free, you really will be free." Now, he immediately goes to the spiritual problem. This is the spiritual problem of every man. That what Jesus was doing here was setting people free from the sin nature. In other words, it would be useless to set up a kingdom if you do not change the heart of people. Israel had already proven that. The world had already proven that man will always gravitate to sin because he is a slave to his sin nature. Verse 37, "I know you are descendants of Abraham, but you're trying to kill me because my word is not welcome among you." Now, of course, he uses the term here, welcome, and then keep in mind I'm using the Holman Christian Standard translation. But he says, notice, the word is not welcome among you. It should be, because Jesus has, remember, demonstrated that he is qualified and he is validated by God to deliver the word. Verse 38, "I speak what I have seen in the presence of the Father. Therefore, you do what you have heard from your father." And now it's going to get really kind of rough with them. It's going to get right to the nature of why they act the way they do. Why they're not receiving him. Verse 39, "Our father is Abraham," they replied. "If you were Abraham's children," Jesus told them, "you would do what Abraham did. But now you're trying to kill me, a man who has told you the truth, that I heard from God. Abraham did not do this. You are doing what your father does." Now, before we get to that, notice Jesus draws a comparison. He says, if you were Abraham's children, you would do the deeds of Abraham. And Paul, in his writings, will build upon this thought here, that the spiritual children of Abraham are the children of promise. And those are those who are children of faith. They believe by faith the promises of God, not just the mere fleshly descendants. And what Jesus then is drawing the line is saying that the physical descendants of Abraham who reject the word in reality have their nature in one father who is not Abraham. Verse 44, you're doing what your father does. We weren't born of sexual immorality, they said. We have one Father, God. Now they're referring to, of course, the spiritual application. In other words, God who raised up Abraham, who brought forth Isaac through barren Sarah. But they missed one point, that God did that through the vehicle of faith. Abraham believed God, and it was accounted to him for righteousness. Jesus said to them, if God were your father, you would love me, because I came from God and I am here. For I didn't come of my own, but he sent me. Why don't you understand what I say? Because you cannot listen to my words. You are of your father, the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, and he has not stood in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he tells a lie, he speaks from his own nature, because he is a liar and the father of liars. Yet because I tell you the truth, you do not believe me. Who among you can convict me of sin? If I tell you the truth, why don't you believe me? The one who is from God listens to God's word. This is why you don't listen, because you are not from God. And so this is probably one of the harshest statements that Jesus had laid upon them, that their spiritual father was actually the devil. But he just doesn't. This is not just name calling. He tells them, here is your actions. You are trying to kill me. Now, of course, they're going to deny it, right? And they're lying as they deny it. Why? Because remember in the 7th chapter, everyone knew that the Pharisees were trying to kill Jesus, right? They even said this, isn't this the man whom they're trying to kill? Now, why would they just kind of come up with that? Why would they say that? Well, because the Jews had been saying that. They had been saying, hey, if you know where Jesus is, let us know so that we can arrest him. They had put it out there that they had it in for Jesus. Had it out for Jesus, I should say. And so their denial in and of itself then just proves they're lying. Now, verse 48, the Jews responded to him, aren't we right in saying that you are a Samaritan and have a demon? Now, typical kind of response that when you are faced with the truth, you don't want to admit the truth, so then you resort to name calling. And so by calling him a Samaritan, that is equal today of being called the N-word. Okay? And then, of course, he said, then you have a demon. Verse 49, I don't have a demon, Jesus answered. On the contrary, I honor my Father, and you dishonor me. I do not seek my glory. The one who seeks it also judges. I assure you, if anyone keeps my word, he will never see death, ever. The Jews said, now we know you have a demon. Abraham died, and so did the prophets. You say, if anyone keeps my word, he will never taste death, ever. So it kind of goes back to Abraham. And then, of course, he's going to make a kind of actually two revelations. Okay? Two revelations. Keep in mind, he just revealed to them that they are not of God. They have no part of God. And I want to kind of keep circulating this, and that is this. Remember, these are the most pious men in Israel. These men are considered to be the most holy men. And their own assessment of themselves is that they have devoted themselves to keeping the law, keeping the commandments, right? Meticulously keeping them. Now, I just kind of want to let this keep rolling in our minds, because even Paul himself, who was a Pharisee, would say, as far as keeping the law, he was blameless. And yet, notice what Jesus says about them. See, it's that you are of your father. Your nature demonstrates that you have a spiritual father, the devil, and therefore you're doing the works and the deeds. One, you're lying. You're liars. Secondly, he says, you're trying to kill me. And then they're going to lie and deny and say, we're not trying to kill you. All right. So verse 53, now Jesus, of course, in verse 52 just said, let me read 52 again. The Jews said, now we know that you have a demon. Abraham died, and so did the prophets. You say, if anyone keeps my word, he will never taste death ever. Now, he just said that, verse 53, are you greater than our father who died, even the prophets who died? Who did you pretend to be? Verse 54, if I glorify myself, Jesus answered, my glory is nothing. My Father, you say about him, he is our God. He is the one who glorifies me. You never known him, but I know him. And if I were to say I don't know him, I would be a liar like you. But I do know him, and I keep his word. Now, kind of interesting because basically he's saying to them, you are lying by even saying you know God. Oh, boy. Verse 56, your father Abraham was overjoyed that he would see my day. He saw it and rejoiced. Now, that's a very interesting statement. How did Abraham see Jesus' day? And there could be a lot of applications or understanding of this verse. Some people would say that even prophetically he was able to see it back in his day. Now there's another view that can say that right now in the even in his death, in the what is called the Abraham's bosom, the afterworld, that God permitted him to see the day and he rejoiced. Now, that was probably more plausible because of how the Jews reacted to Jesus. Now, in the Gospel of Luke, Jesus tells a story that will support this, that Abraham, as well as a lot of the other Old Testament saints, are in a place of in a sense, waiting for his coming. But they're conscious and they are aware of things that are going on in the earth. I should say, as God permits them to be aware of it. Verse 57, the Jews replied, you aren't 50 years old yet, and have you seen Abraham? Jesus said to him, I assure you, before Abraham was, I am. And at that they picked up stones to throw at him. But Jesus was hidden and went out of the temple complex. Now, so the Jews knew what Jesus was saying when he said, before Abraham was, I am. And by saying that statement, this is how it is translated in the English, I am. In the Hebrew, it's actually translated by what is referred to as the tetragram, the unspeakable letters. The Jews felt, and I'm going to say wrongly, that this name was so holy that it could not be pronounced. The problem with that, of course, is that if it was so holy, then God would not have revealed it. And I'm going to get into a whole long, drawn-out thing about the tetragram and the unspeakable letters, and even how we translate the name of God. Usually in some English translation is Lord, others it is Yahweh, others it is Jehovah. Okay, and there's a whole big theological discussion about that, which we're not going to get into. We get into another time, but this context we're not going to get into it. But the idea is that Jesus, by saying that, by mentioning that I am, the Jews knew, and they then picked up stones to throw at him. Now, they were insincere in that because they could ask, they could stop, and they could have said, but does he meet the criteria? So this was sort of a false rage. All right, we will delve into just a little more and journey through the Bible, a closer look. And I'll see you next time in chapter 9. All right, I'll see you then.